keep that going, we're going to welcome Mike Schwartz from ORIGYN Foundation up to the stage to tell us about migrating your global commerce to Web3. Mike, come on up here.
Hi, great to be here. We're deep into the second day after a big night and full bellies, so we'll try and keep this light and interesting. Seems like a pretty audacious title, doesn't it, or objective. It was actually conjured in 2015, and Web3 wasn't really spoken about then. It was probably translate to migrating global commerce to open decentralized infrastructure, but now we can call it Web3. It was a big goal, but I'm here today to tell you that this is already well underway. Perhaps surprisingly so. Hopefully by the end of this little talk, you might have renewed confidence that it is not only well underway, but something that everybody in this room, this community, is actually the community that I think is going to do this. And does that sound scary? Does that sound impossible? Does that sound like you couldn't possibly be part of that? Well, it shouldn't, because you can and you are and you will. And let's talk about it. I'm going to share a few stories and show you a few photographs so you can hopefully stay awake for the first half. And then we'll show you some real stuff. Okay, talk about motivation, how we learned to pitch and how we pivoted, and how we're now capitalizing on all of that 8 years of stuff that's gone on. I grew up in Sydney. That photograph was taken the year I was born, so yeah, I've been around a while. I grew up in a single-parent family. We didn't have any money, but we had lots of love. I didn't really understand at the time that being wealthy in love gives you a lot of confidence to go out into the world and feel safe. You always have a base to go back to. So while I was out there in the world exploring all the inequalities and disadvantages that one might encounter coming from that basis, I always felt very confident and safe. And as I was out there kind of observing the world when I was young and not so young, observed a few things which sort of shaped why I'm doing this now and why I'm here, perhaps why some of you are here. I observed that some start with more than others. Life isn't always fair for us all, even those who start with a lot more than others. Healthy competition is not the same as taking advantage of those who are less fortunate, even though some people like to pretend it is. Injustice seems pretty pervasive. Human frailty is very real. Neglecting rising inequity can lead to catastrophic things. It's okay to be rewarded for good work. If you're not, then you probably won't do good work. So it's okay, you don't feel guilty about that. Finding work that fascinates you is really cool, and probably a lot of people in this room have already hit that spot by being part of this community. But finding work with purpose is really huge, and I'm going to talk about that too. Down the bottom, a couple of things that really worry me. Power and money combined with proprietary data and tech, presenting significant new risks for all of us, I think for humanity. And related to that, our systems of governance are becoming increasingly inadequate. Okay, my first fascination was data. I sat around drawing data models like this one. And I became particularly fascinated with moving structure into content and pushing that envelope as far as possible. This is a long time ago, mind you. Not quite so that we had a thing and a thing relationship, but how close could we get to that? So if we put data structure into content, it was much more malleable and dynamically changeable, which was a competitive advantage. So I spent time drawing models and doing early work in and around financial services, and got to the point where I wanted to draw models that of entire data architectures that would run global financial systems. That ended up taking me to this place. Don't hold it against me. I was just fascinated by data and just ended up there. I was running data architecture for all of funds management there, and Goldman was also a place where database replication was effectively invented, unbeknown to many people. And that, many of you may know that means you've got a single primary at the core. and you pump that out to the replicas all over the world within milliseconds, and you can do local reads out there, and you do remote writes, and it's pretty powerful architecture. Really bastardized stored procedures to read the logs and pump the data out to those replicas. That was a very interesting thing to be involved in. But you know, there's a lot of complexity involved in getting that architecture right. You've got to replicate the replicas. You've got to do backups. You've got to do failovers when things go wrong. You've got to recover them when you get things right again. That'll cost a lot of money. It's very complex. In fact, there's data around that suggests it's about 85% of your IT and ops budget. So if you've got a $3 or $4 billion budget a year, that's a lot of money that you're spending on stuff which has nothing to do with business models or user experience. Complexity also breeds security vulnerabilities. So the problem just compounds. So that was a big part of my background and basis and understanding how that works and living with it and designing it. I went back to Sydney, had a couple of amazing kids who I love dearly, and so that I could come home a bit earlier at night and more often, I started doing startups there. I did some consulting, did some more big industry stuff, again in banking and telecommunications. And then as my kids got a bit older, I got a bit bored of that stuff, and I heard about this organisation, Digital Ventures, that was starting out related to BCG. So I went and ran Asia for Digital Ventures, and obviously was running around a lot of different countries there, building new ventures. How did that work? Well, BCG would take us into the boardrooms, and we would meet the executive suite, and we would leverage their balance sheets, customer bases, distribution channels to create new startups that would be attackers and create unfair advantages for those attackers. We do things like build an online bank. And I remember one example in particular where we put a pretty big team in place, built this thing. It had a market cap of a couple of billion not long after launch. And in return for that, we were to get 9.6 million in fees and a bunch of equity. So that was the model for that business. However, in this particular example, the country will remain unnamed for this example. I was called into the head guy's office a couple of weeks before launch, and he said, "Okay, you guys can go now. Here's $2 million, no equity, and if you want to sue us, you can join the queue because we're friends with the Prime Minister, and you know this is what we do for a living." It was also a country where I would typically land about midnight or 1 a.m. and I'd get a car from the airport into the city, and I'd constantly go past these gangs of kids who are 6 or 7 years old running around at the streets at midnight. I'd look out the window feeling pretty awful in my nice car, looking at these poor kids. And, you know, I came to realise these guys didn't sneak out of their homes. This is how they lived. So this is another thing that sort of shaped why I'm doing this now is seeing this kind of corruption. You know, if systems allow people to screw one another, too often they will, right? So the systems are the problem here quite often, especially when you put it against the background of this vulnerability around human frailty. Okay, so out of that stuff, I talked about fascination and then purpose. I conjured a purpose which was incredibly meaningful and has driven me over the last 8 years without flinching an inch, no matter what obstacle has come up. The purpose is so meaningful and I'm so sure about it that nothing's going to stop me and nothing's going to stop the team. And I don't think anything's going to stop anyone in this community because I think there's a fair few shared values here. So what was it? Again, migrating global commerce to open decentralized infrastructure for the collective benefit of those three giant aspects of society. Transparent, tamper-proof, programmatic, trustworthy, more people participating in the global economy, better distribution of wealth and power, more hope for more people, so less French revolutions. Okay, next thing I discovered, the open decentralized layer 1 protocol that could scale, perform, and had built-in governance didn't exist. So that was a bit of a shame, bit of an impediment straight up there. Ethereum had just launched, but it wasn't there, and it still isn't, let's face it. So in my job, I was running around the world a lot, and I decided to sort of use that job to find out where this protocol might be or where it might come from. And I kept ending up back in Palo Alto, no matter where I went. on this search. And in fact, led me, for example, one weekend at this eerie hotel in Half Moon Bay, where you might imagine that you'd find Rosemary's Baby in your bedroom, but she wasn't there. These guys were. I'm going to show some pictures of a few people here historically, many of whom are in this room, or have been over the last couple of days. You can see Tom Saris there at the front. I met Tom way back then. This is 2015. Tom introduced me to Dom, actually. There's Nick Szabo there, Bill Glyam. So we'd do things like go and do weekends at this place and draw on the whiteboard and think about where this stuff could go. And that was a while ago. Then I was still at Digital Ventures, and I thought, I need to create a vehicle that's fit for purpose here, that's fit for this journey to not just create startups that are companies, but to create these new kinds of organizations and still try and leverage that access to the industry leaders and the corporates. So it was kind of a sleight of hand to create this thing called DVolution, spin it out of Digital Ventures, and then get clusters of industry leaders to help anchor partner or seed these open, decentralized, and tokenized pan-industry platforms or ecosystems. And of course, that was a pretty large ambition and undertaking too. So just seemed to be a habit at that point. I started to coerce unsuspecting engineers who were in and around my organization. And there you can see Rick over in the back there with his nice noggin. Peter Bora, Tiani Lee, some of these guys, that's where it all started for them. You know, we started DVolution and started to try and convert really awesome engineers to this wonderful new dark side. We did Dapathons. If you look very carefully, you'll see Austin there. David Fan, Kevin Seagraves. That's where I met and found those people running Dapathons. So this is quite a long time ago. But we still didn't have this layer 1 protocol. We had great conversations. Dom was the only one amongst that group of people that I showed previously and a broader group who was not only articulating the same problems around scalability and performance and governance, but he already had a bunch of ideas about how to conjure solutions to those problems in ways that could coexist feasibly. So from the start, for me, Dom was really the only one that I could work with. No one else was even purporting to try to do what I needed and what Dom was already down the path of thinking about doing. So what we did have was 2 fledgling teams. You know, I met Artia and a bunch of other people around those early days with Dom and Timo. We had 2 fledgling teams, and we were kind of built. Dom was doing the layer 1 stuff, and I was trying to work on this pan-industry stuff to layer on top of the layer 1. So we just got on with kind of pitching to big industry anyway, even though we didn't have everything in place. So what happened? I started grabbing Dom and shoving him on an aeroplane whenever I could. We went to Australia, we went to Hong Kong, we went to London, we went all over the place. And we pitched and pitched and pitched. And at the beginning, they were like, oh, you know, this is really interesting stuff. You guys are kind of nutcases. Come back, a couple of years if you ever figure anything out, right? But it slowly got better. Eventually, we ran into this guy. He's Bruce Cleaver. He was the CEO of De Beers at the time, and he's now the chairman. And some lessons here. So 35% of global throughput per annum. Fantastic anchor partner, right at the head of a value chain. So if you're going to track something or trace it, you're going to do provenance. Starting with huge volume at the start of the value chain is a good candidate and huge market share. Also, and this speaks to something that ORIGYN learned more recently, some industries have the hardware completely sorted out. What am I talking about when I'm talking about hardware? We've done a lot of R&D, as many of you will know, with luxury goods and watches. We've built robots, we've built desktop boxes, we've done a lot of R&D with cell phones and macro lenses. That's all cool, and that's all getting better and better all the time, and soon it'll be all on the phone. very soon actually. But when an industry already has all the hardware sorted out, like the diamond industry, look at those machines there. They have outlets everywhere, machines everywhere. They already scan diamonds. They weigh them down to 4 decimal places. They scan 3 dimensions. They bounce light off the diamond. They scan for inclusions. They get all that stuff done, and they can just pass you the data. That's low-hanging fruit, and it's 35% of global production through one organization. So how do you actually get them on the hook? This is what we pitched. Digital twins of real-world physical assets that can weave a steel thread of provenance, identification, and authenticity throughout the value chain. So through next-generation NFTs, which Austin and his team have now framed up absolutely brilliantly. A retort to, at the time, the synthetic stone growers who campaigned against De Beers saying, hey, you're overpriced, you're environmentally unsustainable, and you're raping, pillaging people in the environment, which they put a lot of work into not doing that. But the common retort against them from that part of the industry was that they were still doing it. So they need to be able to go back to the source and prove that in places where they were digging diamonds out of the ground, quality of life was improving, people were living a higher standard of living, and so on and so forth. So the bedrock for a host of value-adding services, which I'm going to talk more about shortly. This is huge, and this is a massive advantage of the internet computer. Value-adding services that unlock new revenue streams and growth corridors out of your existing inventory, which again are going to exist entirely on-chain inside a next-gen NFT, inside a canister. An open pan-industry platform. So you're going to seed, De Beers, an open platform for the industry. But we don't wholly own nor control the assets that we're creating. You are going to participate in governance of that platform. There's no supplier-buyer relationship here. Origins of foundation. We're not a for-profit company. It's okay. You're safe. We're not going to be Salesforce or SAP. We're not going to screw you. We can't. By design, we can't do that. Open source, inspectable, decentralized, therefore tamper-proof code base with everything on-chain. So it's trustworthy. That's what we pitched. And when you think about it, back then in 2017, that was a pretty extraordinary thing to pull off. There is the executive committee of De Beers right there in one of the many workshops we had over a long period of time. That's actually Dominic. Oops. There's Dominic hiding right over there. I think Rick's hiding over there. There's a bunch of other people. Any of you know Henning Diedrich is there. Austin was there somewhere. David was there. So this is a long time ago. And that was the first attempt, really, at coercing big industry across to this infrastructure that we're all in love with today. We did manage some early success. It was the world's first attempt at a major industry-led open decentralized pan-industry platform. We tracked the diamonds from mine to finger, uniquely identifying stone from provenance and authentication, digital twins, built on Ethereum. So therefore it didn't scale, it couldn't perform. We had offline traditional governance, so there was a bit of competition around the board table again, not great. And we had to focus on exceptional stones, which is low volume, high value. So ultimately that fell back to a private chain derivative and De Beers only. However, they are about to open it back up again, which is great. At the same time, BCG said to me, hey, this is cool, this stuff you're doing, but tokens, not sure about these token things that you want to kind of create and share with the likes of De Beers. We're a cash-in, cash-out business. We like to pay big bonuses at the end of the year, and this token thing is just not really cool. So if you want to do these token things, you should do it outside this organization. I said, I do want to do these token things, so I'll go outside of the organization. So I created this thing called 55 Foundry. I thought, okay, great, we can pursue tokenization with full commercial and contractual freedom. But if you'll all remember how long it was before the internet computer was actually launched into production, it kind of went on. Do you remember that Dr. Seuss book, The Places You'll Go? You remember The Waiting Place? That was kind of like what it was like for a little while, right? keeping an organization really focused and aligned on that mission and vision through a period like that is really tough. You've got to have real believers when you go through the dark days. People who are really committed to that vision and that mission. Because if you are obsessively committed to that, the alignment won't falter. If you do have some people in your organization that are not, who might be just chasing money, then they'll easily falter, right? So that was a tough period, and our alignment became skew-if in that organization from time to time, coupled with the fact that we were in the US and there were sort of growing regulatory risks around what we wanted to do. So again, kind of stopped that. Created ORIGYN with a couple of other guys, Vincent Perrier and Jean Boxler, many of you who might know from his deep involvement in Dfinity, involvement on the council there. So it's Swiss-based foundation, so therefore FINMA aligned, not SEC. It's tokenized, it has an open source mantra. So after all of these iterations, we finally have the right vehicle. And it's about a whole lot of things. It's about a whole lot of tech. It's also about its legal definition, the regulatory compliance, the commercial model, all of those things. It takes a long while to figure all this stuff out. But, we've figured a lot of it out. So if you want to know how we did it and how things work, feel free to ask if you want to sort of try and replicate some of it, the way you set yourselves up. So ORIGYN is really about building trust in what's most valuable. But truth is, for me at least, it's a Trojan horse for that subtext down there, which is the topic that this presentation is about. Okay, so 8 years. This is a different kind of 8-year gang since Half Moon Bay. Lots of conviction and perseverance and resilience and some madness, of course, as you can probably all relate to that. And we're building on the internet computer for very good reasons. Okay, so now it's time to capitalize. We believe we've built the most powerful digital certificate in the world. Again, many thanks to Austin and his team for defining an incredible next generation standard, and it's brought to life by this perpetual operating system. Again, we're a foundation. Everything we do is destined for open source status. I would urge you to think about using that perpetual OS, that standard. We're not a company, it's not supplier buyer, it's there for you to use and leverage. You don't have to build all that stuff yourself. Leverage it and let's all accelerate one another simultaneously. We've built Minting Studio. So you can mint digital twins through an API call, through a batch load, or by getting into a user interface for high value assets. And you can actually create new templates dynamically for new asset classes with different attributes. And it will handle those and then mint digital twins of those for you. And create digital certificates. And there's a vault for you to inspect those things as well and manage and maintain them. What many people don't know, and this is a pretty cool slide, we're already working in multiple industries. In many respects, we've flown under the radar, but we're definitely going to be coming out in the next 6 months or so. We're doing really cool pilots with diamonds and gemstones again, with big grading companies, one of the world's largest grading companies at the core, with 6 or 7 others involved. And they do about 3 million certificates a year. Right? Industry will bring you volume. Right? B2C is a perfectly reasonable strategy to follow in terms of trying to get your business, your effort to market and have it scale and become successful. But industry, if you can snare industry, don't be afraid of industry. Don't be afraid to pitch to industry. If you snare big industry, you'll get millions and millions and millions of customers for nothing. They've already got them. But if you can convince industry, it's a very, very efficient way for you to get a lot of users. Okay, so with gemstones, we're working with those guys. Many of you will see, that's not public yet. That will be public very, very shortly as we move to production. Probably only, that's public. Federal Italy's public. So we're working with Italy to certify the procurement and manufacturing processes for which is up to 350,000 organisations in the country which have goods that are 100% made in Italy. We have 2 other countries in Europe at the table right now. We have a pitch to the EU, I think in July. We have another large economy in South America at the table. So that's a real growth corridor right there. It also gives us access to all the certified member companies. So there's millions upon millions upon millions of products to be certified within those companies as well. Many of you know we already power fractionalized art through platforms like Yumi. And the astute among you will have noticed that there was a precious metal soft launch this month around gold and creating NFTs from real gold bars that are housed in a vault under a bank in Switzerland, and they are audited by KPMG once every 3 months. So these NFTs are 100% perpetually backed by real gold bars, and they always will be. In something like 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, something like that, we will be placing those inside. You can lock those in a DAO, those NFTs, and then the DAO will mint a bunch of gold tokens. So the chain of custody says that those tokens will always be perpetually 100% backed by real gold. Hopefully you don't release this talk for another 2.5, 3 weeks, because I'm not supposed to be talking about that until we do the PR for it. But anyway, there's a sneak peek of what's coming. We're working with a bunch of other industries as well right now, which I won't mention. So there's about 3 or 4 others. So when I said the name of this speech here, this talk, and I said, hey, you might be surprised that this is already really happening, I wasn't kidding. This is already really happening. We are migrating global commerce through big industry to Web3, and it's all on the IC. Now, you guys can do this too. You can be a part of this. This room, this community is leading this charge for real. And you can do it too. You can be a part of it. Okay, this slide is almost the last one. It's a little wordy, but I just want to summarize the pitch to big industry, right? Okay. A pan-industry platform that no one wholly owns nor controls. Leverage of an open source and decentralized utility code base with everything on chain, so it's trustworthy. Transparent, tokenized, programmatic governance. No single company owns underlying IP or trade secrets. No proprietary software exists. No traditional supplier-buyer relationship exists. No buyer lock-in or platform risk exists. You know, these are companies that are sick of that. And when they do their intergenerational platform upgrades, they're looking for this stuff now. They're wise enough to look for it. Their overall cost can go down. Security gets better. This stuff is getting greener, the IC. I mentioned that stat before. Strip out 85% of your IT and ops cost. No backup, failover, recovery, content distribution networks, firewalls. That stuff is gone. It's baked into the protocol. Almost incorruptible data in perpetuity. Core use cases, provenance, identification, authentication. If we can put extraordinary amounts of data inside this next-gen NFT, entirely in canister, that means not just high-resolution images and 3D volumetric video entirely within NFT. That also means entire dApps, like a marketplace dApp, a self-sovereign object. It also means that if I'm pitching to a corporate, I can put a box over here and I can describe all of this value, differentiated value. So let's go back to diamonds for a moment. Today, the biggest grading companies distribute PDFs for a diamond they've graded. Paper, as well as a QR code to pull up a PDF on your screen. Those are just old static artifacts, right? Compare and contrast, now we preload a digital certificate, tamper-proof one, inside a vault on your phone as a dApp, and the buyer simply receives that. The diamond grading company can offer to its customers, like Macy's or Costco or whoever, it can either offer directly to market or through its customers a bunch of other value-adding services inside that NFT. Proof of ownership, insurance, warranties, lost and stolen alerts, appraisal history, service records, bequeathals, heritage data, you can go on and on. These are all real services, and they can all be embedded inside the NFT, inside the digital certificate, inside the vault. And so Costco or Macy's, whoever, can reach those customers and they can upsell a whole bunch of new value-added services. So if you can describe that to a corporate, to an industry leader and say, here's some new value. Would you like some new revenue streams? Would you like some new growth corridors out of your existing inventory? Would you like that without having to sign up for another Salesforce or SAP? Would you like to be in control of the platform? Would you like to be cheap? Would you like to be incredibly secure? And the answer is yes, of course. I think about a time, so I'll hurry up. The answer is yes. And then next statement really is, well, okay, great, you want that differentiated value. Well, that needs to be deployed on Web3, not this Web2 stuff. So let's just get on with it. Okay, let's get on with it. I haven't even talked about blockchain or tokens at that point, maybe a little bit around governance. But that's it. So that's your pitch, all on chain. The great big rocks, lessons learned from many decades of working, probably a few more decades than a couple of you. What needs to stay non-negotiable with your venture, with your dream and your ambition? Your vision and your mission, it's got to be a rock, right? Come up with it, and if it's got purpose, all the better, purpose to you. And then the alignment of all of your resources to that. Those simple things, you keep those as your rocks, hard and fast. What is pivotable along the way, and it doesn't matter if people say, where's your box? What's happening with watches, right? You can change your strategy, you can change your tactics, and you can adjust your product market fit. In fact, you have to, and you should. And as long as those things are being pivoted to make sure that you're optimizing your pathway to delivering on that vision and mission, that is absolutely, it's better than fine. It's what you should be doing and what you have to do. So those are your rocks. So we really are doing this. We're doing it right now. As you can see, it's already happening, and it's happening on the IC. And you are part of the community that's going to deliver on this. Right? We are going to deliver on this. This small group of people here and beyond this room in this community are going to deliver on this mission. We already are. And we're just about to pass the tipping point where there's no point of return. So I hope you join me on the journey, us on the journey. Let's help one another to get there wherever we can. Any initiative in this room, any person on any journey here where we can use one another's services, there's a whole lot of stuff you can get out of calling ORIGYN services. You don't have to build all that stuff, right? It's already built for you. There's many examples like that in this room. So let's help one another out and do that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Artia. Thank you, gang, for putting this on. It's been so good to see everybody. It's been so overdue, and 20 out of 10 for making it happen, guys. So thanks a lot.